Okay, let's just dive right in, shall we? You know that moment, that super awkward, universally human moment where you see someone you absolutely know, you start to smile, you open your mouth to say hi, and poof, their name is just gone. If you've been there, and I know you have, then you're in the right place, because it turns out you're not rude or forgetful. Your brain is just playing by a very, very different set of rules.
Oh yeah, we have all felt this. It's that moment of pure, silent panic. It's the feeling where your brain, the same brain that can remember the lyrics to a song you haven't heard in 20 years, just completely flatlines. You might even start desperately hoping their phone rings, just to save you from having to say their name. It is such a common experience.
And here's the big takeaway right up front. This is not a personal failing. It is not a sign that you don't care or that you're not smart enough. It is a direct result of how our brains are wired to prioritize information, especially when we're under a little bit of social pressure. You're not bad at remembering. Your brain is just busy doing something else that it thinks is way more important.
So to really get what's going on, we have to look at the sheer chaos of a first impression. That single moment when you meet someone new, well, it's actually one of the most cognitively demanding things that we do.
I mean, just think about everything your brain is trying to do at once. You're reading their facial expression, you're picking up their tone of voice, you're trying to figure out the social situation, you're wondering if they like you, you're wondering if you like them, and you're already trying to think of what you're going to say next. Your brain is at max capacity. And right into the middle of all that, someone just tosses this one little piece of data, their name.
And this, right here, is the absolute core of the problem. A name, like Kevin or Sarah, is basically just an arbitrary sound. It has no inherent meaning. It doesn't connect to anything you already know. So to your brain, which is juggling all this other really important social information, that name is just empty data. And being the efficient machine that it is, your brain often just lets it drop.
Psychologists have this fantastic term for this exact thing. It's called the Baker/Baker paradox, and it's so clever. Researchers found that people were way more likely to remember that a person is a baker than to remember that their last name is Baker. Same word, totally different results in our memory. Why is that? Well, this comparison makes it so clear. When you hear a baker as a job, it instantly connects to a whole web of ideas in your brain. You think of flour, the smell of fresh bread, maybe getting up early in the morning, a feeling of warmth. But the name Baker? It's a dead end. It just floats there, totally alone, with nothing for your memory to latch onto.
But okay, it's not just about our brain's filing system. There's also a really powerful psychological factor at play here, especially for those of us who tend to get a little bit inside our own heads in social situations.
If this little internal voice sounds familiar, you know exactly what I'm talking about. While someone is literally telling you their name, your mind is busy critiquing your own performance. That inner monologue can be so loud that it just completely drowns out the information coming in from the outside world, including their name.
And guess what? There's even a scientific name for this. It's called the next in line effect. Studies have shown that if you put people in a circle to introduce themselves, they almost always have the worst memory for what the person right before them said. And why? Because they weren't listening. They were mentally rehearsing what they were about to say. The thing is, for people with social anxiety, they're kind of stuck in that next in line state the whole time.
So this is a really important reframe. If you struggle with names because your mind is racing, it's not a failure of your memory. It's actually a successive preoccupation. Your attention isn't focused outward on cataloging new data, it's focused inward on managing this social encounter itself.
Okay, so now we get the why. But it's also really important that we acknowledge the other side of this coin. Because while our reasons for forgetting are totally valid, the feeling of being forgotten is also very real. I mean, let's be honest about it. When someone forgets your name, especially if it's happened more than once, it stings a little. It can feel like a small personal rejection. It sends this unintentional message that says, you weren't important enough for my brain to hold on to. Now, even if that's not what the person means, that's often how it lands emotionally. But here's the good news. You can absolutely fight back against your brain's natural tendencies. Since your brain isn't going to automatically build that memory connection, you just have to do it manually. And there are 3 really simple tricks that work wonders. First, repeat their name right away. Nice to meet you, Mike. Second, connect it. Oh, Mike, that's my cousin's name. And third, and this one's my favorite, visualize it. This visualization trick is so powerful because it gives that random, arbitrary sound a real, concrete image to hook onto. So for a guy named Mike, you could picture him holding a microphone. For a woman named Lily, you could picture her holding a lily flower.
What you're doing is manually building that web of associations that your brain didn't create on its own. You're giving it a hand.
All right, let's bring this all together with one last really powerful reframe. Forgetting a name isn't necessarily a sign of a bad memory. In fact, it might just be a sign of a totally different kind of mental strength.
See, people who are bad with names are often highly associative thinkers. They might not remember the label you gave them, but they remember the meaningful stuff. They'll remember that story you told about your dog, or the specific way you laughed at a joke, or the interesting idea you shared. Their brain is prioritizing the rich, emotional, contextual data, what you might call the texture of a person.
And this is so important. That's not a bug, it's a feature. This kind of mental architecture is perfectly built for things like empathy, for storytelling, for building deep emotional connections. It's just not great at the very specific, very mechanical task of remembering an arbitrary label when it's under pressure.
And that, really, is the most important thing to take away from all of this. When you forgot that name, your brain wasn't being lazy. It was making a choice. It decided that the most important thing to remember wasn't the sound they were called, but the substance of who they were in that moment. It was busy cataloging the person, not the label.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you feel that flash of panic or shame for forgetting a name, just take a breath. And instead of judging yourself, get curious. Ask yourself, what did my brain choose to remember instead? Was it a feeling, a story, an idea? You might just be surprised to find that your brain wasn't forgetting at all. It was just remembering something much more important.